March 4th, 8:23 a.m. An elevator inside Helix 88, one of Manhattan's tallest office towers, suddenly dropped from the 43rd floor. No warning, no siren, just gravity. Inside, 6 people. A pregnant woman, a corporate attorney, 2 college students, a father, and his son. The cabin plunged in silence. Emergency brakes failed. Safety protocols didn't activate. Then, it stopped. 6 meters from the ground. No crash. No fatalities. But when first responders checked the system logs, something didn't add up. No AI commands had been sent. No staff intervention was recorded. And one security camera, half obscured by dust, captured something nobody could explain. A woman crawling out of the elevator shaft's service crawl space. Mid-40s. Black. Muscular. Wearing a faded gray jumpsuit and a black ball cap stitched with neon red and blue thread. No name. No badge. No record of entry. She paused, looked back at the shaft, then vanished into a sublevel hallway that hasn't been used in over 20 years. No one knew who she was. No one claimed responsibility. But 6 people are alive because of her. And the building? It never saw her coming. At 8:08 a.m., just 15 minutes before the free fall, Nyasha walked into the staff access corridor beneath Helix 88, a 74-story glass and steel tower, slicing through Manhattan's skyline like a blade. She wasn't on the shift roster. She didn't wear the neon green utility badge required by maintenance. Her jumpsuit was steel gray, unbranded. Scuffed boots. A black ball cap pulled low. She looked like a mistake. And that's exactly how the building's operations manager, David Crowley, saw her. He was lean, mid-40s, former Air Force logistics. Bald with tactical pride. Spotting Nyasha at the sublevel security gate, he narrowed his eyes. "You're not cleared for this floor," he barked, stepping between her and the access console. "This zone's for tech crew only." Nyasha said nothing. She tilted her head slightly, as if listening to something in the walls. Crowley scoffed. "Ma'am, unless you're here to deliver cleaning supplies, I need you to turn around. This isn't a tourist attraction." She didn't flinch. No eye contact. Just a slow step sideways, hand brushing the rusted emergency panel beside the elevator shaft. Crowley rolled his eyes. "Look, I've got an inspection in 5 minutes. I don't have time to." But Nyasha was already gone, slipped past him without touching him, moving like a shadow. He sighed, flagged a nearby guard, and muttered, "Find out who let her in. I'm not babysitting strays today." Upstairs, 6 people stepped into Lift C, a double-decker express elevator with carbon fiber cabling and AI load balancing. The kind of vertical transport that made investors feel invincible. Among them, Sandra Leong, 7 months pregnant, headed to her OB appointment at Mount Sinai. Tyler Cross, junior attorney running late for a deposition in Midtown East. Javier and Elsa Rivera, college students visiting the city for the first time. Curtis Doyle, floor manager, and his 11-year-old son. Max, who had a day off school. They didn't know each other. They barely exchanged glances. Just another Tuesday morning in New York. But 3 floors down, a warning light flickered in maintenance substation C. A redundancy relay, ancient, analog, tucked inside a forgotten cabinet sealed behind a tool cart, flashed red for 0.7 seconds. No alert was sent to the central system. No push notification hit any engineer's watch. And Crowley, still sipping coffee in his office, grumbling about randoms in hallways. If he'd checked the log, he'd have seen the anomaly. If he'd scanned the sublevel camera, he'd have seen her. But nobody checks systems they think are perfect. Nobody questions people they don't respect. Especially women like Nyasha, stocky, silent, middle-aged, black. She didn't fit the template of a systems savior. She wasn't wearing an ID badge. She didn't carry a laptop or toolkit. She just walked in. And sometimes, that's all it takes to be ignored. She moved down the ladder behind the east elevator bay, through a maintenance tunnel so old it still bore a rusted sign. Elevator override, manual only. She paused. From somewhere deep in the concrete veins of the building, she felt it. A shift, a vibration, a frequency she knew too well. Something was about to break. At 8:13 a.m., Lift C glided upward like silk, whisper quiet, its walls lined with brushed titanium and ambient blue LEDs that adjusted to stress levels and ambient noise. It was the kind of elevator designed to feel like a cocoon, a seamless, climate-controlled chamber that insulated high-level executives from the chaos of the outside world. Inside, everyone played their role. Sandra Leong leaned against the mirrored wall, rubbing her lower back, scrolling through a baby tracking app that was telling her she was 31 weeks, 5 days. She smiled softly at the animated fetus spinning on the screen. She hated elevators, but this one felt safe. Plush floors, whisper-quiet motors, and that strange vanilla sage scent they pumped in. Tyler Cross checked his watch for the third time in 1 minute, lips pressed into a thin line. The deposition downtown had been moved up an hour, and the client, an international crypto fund, was already unhappy with counsel. He exhaled sharply, then switched his screen to a news feed. Another drone strike in Ukraine. Another crypto theft. Another Tuesday. Javier and Elsa Rivera stood near the glass panel, snapping selfies like tourists pretending to be astronauts. They'd never been higher than floor 12 in their lives. Floor 42 felt like another planet. Elsa grinned and whispered, "We should come back here on our honeymoon." Javier nodded, eyes wide. Curtis Doyle kept glancing at his son, Max, who was bouncing a rubber ball softly against the elevator wall. Bop, catch. Bop, catch. Curtis knew he shouldn't have brought the boy to the office, but Max's school had a gas leak, and Curtis had deadlines. "Hey," he whispered, "easy on the walls. These things cost more than my car." Everyone was calm, distracted. The cabin moved smooth and confident, like it always had. Below them, somewhere in the belly of the building, a small arc of electricity jumped across a degraded contact point. A switch meant to transfer power in the event of a surge failed to close. A delay of 1.2 seconds, invisible to any digital monitoring system, caused the onboard elevator AI to misread the cab's speed. And just like that, it began to overcompensate. Friction mounts. Pressure increases. No one notices. Yet, Sandra's app freezes for a split second. Tyler's phone stutters, then corrects. Max's ball bounces slightly to the left. He frowns. At the same moment, on sublevel 4, Nyasha removes a panel no one has touched in 19 years. The bolts are fused. She uses a worn wrench. The seal breaks with a hiss, releasing stale air and the tang of oxidized metal. Behind it, a row of analog switches, pressure gauges, and a mechanical governor, forgotten tech from a pre-digital era. She brushes her fingers across the old brass dial. It hums. She tilts her head. From above, a sound. Faint, but unmistakable. WHRRRRRR. It's subtle, barely a decibel louder than the lift's normal motor. But she's heard it before, in Bosnia, in Baghdad, in blackout simulations designed to mimic cascading failures. And then she sees it. One of the analog gauges begins to spin, wildly, erratically, its needle trembling on the red line. The digital systems might not see it, but the old ones still speak. If someone knows how to listen, she mutters one word under her breath. Not fear, not surprise, just a name. Lift C, 8:16 a.m., 3 minutes before freefall. In the control room on level B1, for screens glowed green. System health, optimal. Load balance, normal. Vertical velocity, within threshold. Ravi Patel, lead facilities technician, stirred powdered creamer into his coffee with the back of a plastic knife. He hated the stuff, but the espresso machine was down, and the coffee tasted like burnt rubber. He glanced at the screen labeled Lift C, watched the numbers tick upward as the elevator approached floor 47. Nothing unusual. Smooth ascent. No alerts. Not even a flutter in the load signature. He yawned, turned toward his phone, thumb scrolling through fantasy football pics. 3 feet away, on the analog panel wired to a backup power strip, the one nobody touched anymore, a red bulb flickered, then glowed. Faint. Pulsing. No one looked. Sublevel 4. Service duct behind Lift C shaft. Nyasha crouched beside the ancient governor housing. The gauge needle slammed right, hit the limit pin, bounced. Something was wrong. The mechanical override was vibrating, just slightly, but enough to let her know the shaft was under stress. She placed her palm flat on the steel wall. It was warm, too warm, and then, like a whisper between gears, she heard it. Catch KHHH. A click. Not loud, not aggressive, just final. Her eyes narrowed. She turned the old dial regulator a 1/4 inch counterclockwise. Nothing changed. The governor continued to twitch. This wasn't a signal issue. This was physical. A fault in the brake rail tensioner, or, worse, a misfire in the dynamic speed compensator. She exhaled slow, then moved. 8:17 a.m. Lift C, approaching floor 50. Inside the cabin, Max dropped his rubber ball. It didn't bounce. It just slid. Elsa noticed first. Was that the floor moving? Curtis, still reading an email, shook his head. Elevator always flexes at height. Happens all the time. Javier squinted at the floor indicator. We're at 50. Weren't we just at 47? Tyler looked up from his phone. Probably skipping floors. Express lift. Relax. But Sandra didn't relax. She gripped the handrail. Her breath caught in her chest. Something was wrong. The cabin tilted. Not much, maybe a few degrees, but enough to shift weight. Enough to make the rubber ball roll from corner to corner, as if the floor were suddenly alive. Max's eyes followed it. Dad? A chime sounded, then stopped. The lights flickered, then corrected. Sublevel 4. Nyasha reached for the manual cutoff. A thick copper switch labeled in faded stencil. EMG override, gov circuit. She grabbed it. Yanked. Nothing happened. Of course not. No power. The system had been bypassed years ago, rerouted to central automation. The manual override could only be activated if the digital controller failed, which hadn't happened yet. She muttered again. Something not in English. Something soft and sharp at once. Then turned and vanished back into the crawlspace. B1 control room. One monitor blinked. A number changed. Velocity. 2.4 m/s. 3.1. 4.0. Ravi didn't see it. He was laughing at a meme. He didn't notice the small red text beside the velocity display. Manual governor circuit active, mismatch error. He didn't even hear the faint ping from the backup panel, the sound of a 36-year-old relay throwing itself open for the first time since the first Bush administration. But Nyasha did. 3 floors below, she pulled herself up into the base of the shaft. She didn't need a screen to tell her. She could feel it in the steel. Lift C was accelerating, and no one had touched a button. 8:18 a.m. The hum was the first thing to vanish. Elevators aren't silent, not really. They hum, whisper, breathe. Micro-vibrations keep the illusion of stillness alive. But at 8:18, Lift C went dead silent for 0.6 seconds. No motor, no brakes, just gravity, taking back what was borrowed. Then came the drop. It wasn't cinematic. No explosive cable snap, no theatrical scream. Just a sickening, instantaneous absence of support. One moment, weight was where it belonged. The next, everyone was airborne. Max's feet left the floor. So did the rubber ball. So did Sandra's bag. Javier's phone spun in the air like a coin. Then came the jolt. The lift tried to correct. Its AI detected a fault, engaged the magnetic stabilizers, but they'd already missed the window. The system wasn't built for true freefall. These were micro-fixes. Algorithms written for glitches, not death. Tyler slammed against the wall. Elsa screamed. Curtis grabbed his son mid-air as Sandra curled instinctively, shielding her stomach. The cabin groaned, the walls flexed. Everything, breath, time, light, stuttered. And the floor indicator? Dead. Just a blinking dash. Sublevel 4. Nyasha was no longer listening. She was moving, hand over hand, boot over rung. She climbed the emergency ladder lining the elevator shaft. The space was narrow, industrial, hot air rising through the shaft like a chimney. Her palm grazed rust. Her boot slipped, caught. Blood welled under her fingernails. She counted seconds. 5 floors, then 10. She could feel it above her, the rumble, the weight, the falling. At sublevel 2, she slipped off the ladder, landing on a grated maintenance deck. She moved to the mechanical clutch housing, a set of manual arresters installed in the early 90s, never fully removed. They weren't part of any digital system. They responded to friction, heat, instinct, the kind of tech no one uses until it's already too late. Inside the cabin, it was all screaming now. Max clutched his dad's neck, eyes wide, mute with terror. Sandra was crying, silently. Javier held Elsa's hand so tight it went purple. The cabin was shaking. The lights dimmed, then stuttered, then went black. Freefall. Sublevel 1. Nyasha yanked a rusted control lever, one of 2 manual teeth in the arrestor system. The first jammed. She reached for the second. A panel snapped under her weight. The shaft roared. The air compressed, a storm of steel and wind. The elevator was coming. Fast. Too fast. She had 7 seconds, maybe 6. She pulled. Nothing. She adjusted her stance. Slid her boot under the housing. Gritted her teeth. Pulled again. Click. Chunk. The second tooth engaged. The arrestor teeth were now armed, but not triggered. Then held. Max dropped the rubber ball. It bounced. 8:19 a.m. Stillness. No groaning steel. No emergency sirens. Just a low, mechanical hum, like the building itself was holding its breath. Inside Lift C, 6 people remained frozen in the semi-darkness, unsure if they were alive or seconds from death. The floor was tilted slightly, maybe 2 degrees. The emergency lighting bathed everything in soft amber, like candlelight in a crypt. Curtis Doyle was the first to move. He opened one eye, arms still wrapped around Max, who trembled but didn't cry. Curtis looked at his son's face, then around the cabin. No blood, no shattered bones, no one screaming, just silence. Sandra Leong blinked slowly, her hands still cradling her belly. The baby moved, breathing fast. "It's okay," he said, voice shaky. "We're okay." Tyler slumped against the wall, one hand pressed to his ribs. Every breath hurt, but not sharp enough to mean broken. He looked up at the ceiling, a ceiling he had been convinced he'd never see again, and exhaled the breath he'd been holding for 2 floors. Then came the first sound. Thunk. A soft knock from the top corner of the cabin, like someone tapping metal with a knuckle. Everyone looked up. Thunk. 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 Deliberate. Rhythmic. Curtis stood, slowly. Max clung to his leg. He reached toward the hatch overhead, but it was sealed. The knocking stopped. Silence again. Sublevel 1. Nyasha crouched near the outer shaft, wiping blood from her knuckles. Her left arm ached, muscle strain or maybe a partial tear, but she was used to that. Her breathing slowed. She watched the cabin through the maintenance gap, saw shadows shifting behind the reinforced glass. Alive. All of them. She reached into her side pouch, pulled a wrench with a bent tooth, and slid it across the floor toward the wall, leaving it partially visible. Then she stood. Time to disappear. 8:23 a.m. In the Helix 88 lobby, the first evacuation alarm sounded, for minutes late. A receptionist at the security desk answered a blinking call from Sublevel 1. "There's someone in the shaft," the voice said. "Emergency services already dispatched," she replied, without looking up. "No," the voice said again, firmer. "There's someone in the shaft. But they're not supposed to be here." The line went dead. 9:07 a.m. FDNY rescue team pried open the cabin door with hydraulic wedges. The passengers were pulled out, one by one. Bruised. Shocked. Alive. A medic crouched beside Sandra. "Someone up top trigger the brakes?" he asked. "No," she said. "I thought you did." The medic furrowed his brow. "We didn't get any traction till 5 minutes ago. It just stopped on its own." Tyler muttered. Someone knocked from above. Elsa nodded, eyes wide. "We heard it. I swear we heard someone up there." But when they opened the shaft hatch, nothing. No one. Just the faint echo of a wrench rolling quietly into shadow. 9:42 a.m. By the time the second news chopper circled Helix 88, the elevator shaft was sealed and cordoned off with yellow tape. Workers in reflective vests pushed back reporters, citing an automated systems malfunction. FDNY had cleared the cabin, documented the scene. David Crowley paced behind the others, arms crossed tightly. "So no alerts?" he asked. Ravi, still rubbing sleep from his eyes, shook his head. No system flagged anything. The emergency brakes didn't register either. But they worked. Ravi hesitated. "They caught something. But we didn't trigger them. And the AI didn't either." Crowley leaned in. "Then what did?" Ravi tapped the screen. "There's a governor override, manual only. From sublevel. Pre-digital. Technically still wired. But nobody ever uses it." "Then how the hell was it active?" Nobody answered. At 10:06 a.m., elevator technicians arrived from the city's Department of Buildings. They examined the shaft, tested the clutch systems, and noted the following. Crawled into the maintenance recess at sublevel 1 and spotted something odd wedged into the corner. A wrench. Old. Industrial. Tooth chipped. Handle scorched. He held it up. "This yours?" he asked one of the building staff. Crowley stared at it like it was radioactive. Never seen that before. Ruben turned it in the light. Looks custom, not union issue. He placed it in a plastic evidence sleeve. Unlabeled. Unclaimed. 11:22 a.m. The surviving passengers were interviewed separately in the security office on the mezzanine floor. Each gave slightly different answers. But two things remained consistent. 1. None of them knew what triggered the stop. 2. 3. Several reported hearing someone above them. Seconds after the fall ceased. 4. Tyler Cross swore he heard metal being knocked in a pattern. Elsa described it as 3 taps, like code. Curtis insisted he saw movement through the hatch glass, a figure in shadow. Stocky. Still. Watching. But when shown the internal camera footage, all that appeared was static. No one knocking. No one standing over the hatch. Just electromagnetic interference and glitchy timestamps between 8:17 and 8:20. 12:41 p.m. Sandra Leong sat in the hospital's maternity ward, for in her arm, the elevator doors, a red smudge on the threshold. Was it rust? Grease? Or blood? She stared at it. There had been someone. She was sure of it. Someone no one could name. No one could trace. A woman in gray, faceless, voiceless, who'd knocked once, twice, 3 times. Then vanished. 1:04 p.m. David Crowley stood in sublevel 1, arms stiff at his sides. As 2 officials from the city's Department of Buildings finished sweeping the mechanical bay. No unauthorized personnel were recorded in this sector today, said the lead inspector. A tired-looking woman in her 50s with a clipboard and a lanyard that read, "Do not assume." Crowley shook his head. You saw the manual override. That doesn't pull itself. She didn't flinch. Maybe a power surge tripped it. Crowley pointed at the wrench still in the evidence bag. A surge didn't leave that behind. The woman raised an eyebrow. Then you tell me who used it. He didn't have an answer. Back in the control room, Ravi scrolled through badge logs from 5 a.m. to noon. Nothing matched. No credentials registered on sublevel 1. A small patch of dead pixels appeared on camera 4B, as if a shape had passed too close to the lens. He flagged both anomalies, attached them to the file, and stared at the screen. Unknown presence. Unknown entry. Unknown exit. The words felt like a ghost story typed in real time. At 2:38 p.m., FDNY received a call from a man claiming to have seen someone leaving the sublevel access tunnel that morning. Describe them, the operator asked. Woman. Stocky. Black. Gray uniform. Maybe 40-something. Moved like she knew exactly where she was going. Did you speak to her? No. I called out. She didn't stop. Did she look scared? The man paused. No. She looked finished. By 3:15 p.m., the wrench had disappeared from the evidence bin. Building security reviewed the footage. Every staff member entering the vault that day had logged in. None had removed it. The camera showed the bin. Then static. Then the bin again, empty. No breach, the report said. No entry. No tampering. The item had simply ceased to exist. At 4:02 p.m., Tyler Cross left the building and walked 3 blocks to a quiet bar on East 55th. He ordered a bourbon, neat, and sat in silence. An hour earlier, a partner at his law firm had called to say the client didn't blame him for missing the meeting. You survived an elevator crash, they said. Take the rest of the week. But he couldn't stop thinking about the knock. 3 taps. Like Morse. Like a message. When the bartender came to check on him, Tyler scribbled something on a napkin. ____ SOS. He stared at it for a long time. By 5:33 p.m., the city had issued its preliminary findings. No equipment failure. No casualties. Elevator functioned as designed. Arrestor system deemed sufficient. Media outlets parroted the line. AI saves 6 in Midtown plunge. Brakes do their job. Smart elevator avoids tragedy. Not a single mention of manual levers. Or old switches. Or the woman no one could explain. And by 7:46 p.m., in a parking garage 3 blocks from Helix 88, a solitary maintenance panel stood open. Just barely. Almost nothing. Inside, 1 fingerprint. Unmatched. And a small scrap of gray fabric. Torn. Oiled. Faintly stained with blood. Security closed it at 8:02. Logged it as routine. The file was sealed. No one asked again. They didn't speak about her right away. Not to the press. Not to the fire department. Not to each other. For hours, it felt safer to believe the official version. Smart brakes, lucky timing. Clean exit. But silence doesn't hold forever. That evening, in a small triage room at Mount Sinai, Elsa Rivera clutched a heated blanket around her shoulders and whispered to the nurse taking her vitals. There was someone above us. The nurse paused, pin hovering. I heard knocking. 3 times. Clear. And then nothing. But I felt someone there. She didn't push further. Just logged it under trauma hallucination and moved on. Meanwhile, Curtis Doyle sat beside his son in the pediatric wing, both of them too wired to sleep. Max kept drawing on the whiteboard, over and over, the same thing. A rectangle. A ladder. A person halfway out. Curtis squinted. What's that, bud? Max looked up. She was there. Over the window. She looked at me. Curtis blinked. A woman. Max nodded. She had a cap. An orange on her arm. Curtis stared at the sketch, then at his son. He remembered something. A shadow, maybe. A flicker. He hadn't said a word about it. Until now. In Queens. Tyler Cross pored over Reddit threads about elevator safety. Nothing explained what they went through. Nothing mentioned arresters that kick in without a digital trace. He posted anonymously under a throwaway handle. Midtown. March 4th. Elevator didn't stop because of software. Someone triggered it. We heard her. She was there. Replies came fast. Urban legend. Not her husband. Not the doctors. But in that moment, when the cabin went still, something else had moved. Not mechanical. Not human. Intentional. Like someone choosing them. Choosing to save them. She scrolled through building archives online. Nothing public. No list of maintenance staff. No record of emergency overrides in the last 5 years. She closed her laptop and whispered to the quiet. Thank you. The next day, the building replaced the damaged elevator panel. Fresh screws. Reinforced glass. New digital badge reader. But in the data core. Then quietly overwritten by an automated cleanup cycle. Accidental, they said. Just a fluke. Yet across the city, 6 people still remembered what the data would not. The tapping. The pause. The impossible stop. And the shape they couldn't fully describe. Only recognize if they ever saw it again. A gray sleeve. A black cap. And something orange on the arm. They didn't know her name. Didn't know how she got there. But when strangers called it an AI miracle, they all flinched. Because someone was there. And she saved them. By Friday morning, Helix 88 looked almost unchanged. We apologize for the inconvenience. The lobby plants were watered. The fountain was running. And the words, elevator incident, were already fading into rumor. That's how the city works. Tragedy flirts, and New York shrugs it off. Everyone keeps walking. Deadlines don't pause. Rent doesn't forgive. But for 6 people, nothing felt the same. He dreamed of the knock. 3 taps. Same rhythm. Same presence. Like someone reminding him not to forget. Sandra Leong canceled her appointments for the week and spent her time at home. Folding onesies and reorganizing drawers that didn't need organizing. Every time the baby kicked, she felt both relief and guilt. What if that stop had come 1 second later? What if the knock hadn't happened? Her husband, Mark, tried to reassure her. You're safe. You got lucky. But it didn't feel like luck. It felt like someone chose her. Not statistics. Not automation. Someone. Javier and Elsa Rivera extended their stay in New York. At least, that's what they told their hotel. In truth, they visited the building 3 times that week. Stood across the street, coffees in hand, just staring. The second time, Elsa turned to Javier. If she hadn't been there. He nodded. I know. They didn't need to finish the sentence. But not quite true. Because truth never makes the morning headline. At 3:11 p.m., Ravi Patel was asked to submit his final report. He did. Behind old schematics and faded training logs, he wrote 3 letters. And why? He didn't know what they meant. Not exactly. But they were the only part of the log that hadn't erased itself. And that meant something. Even if no one else believed it. By Monday, none of them had spoken to each other. 6 people who shared 11 seconds of death and 1 impossible return had scattered like dust in wind. No group chat. No survivors brunch. Just quiet reentry into lives that no longer fit quite right. But none of them forgot. Not the sound. Not the knock. Not the presence. They remembered her. Tyler Cross walked through Madison Square Park at lunch and found himself stopping near the maintenance trucks. He looked for gray jumpsuits. Black caps. Orange markings. Nothing. He didn't know what he'd say if he saw her. But he wanted the chance to say it. Sandra Leong started leaving handwritten notes, taped to bulletin boards, folded into library books, slipped under tables in cafes around Midtown. Most said the same thing. If you were there, thank you. I was carrying more than just myself that day. She never signed them. She never needed to. Curtis Doyle sent a letter to FDNY. It wasn't angry or formal, just confused. He wrote, "My son saw someone. I saw something. That elevator didn't stop by chance." They thanked him. Filed it. Never replied. He expected that. Still, it felt wrong to stay silent. So he told Max, "If you ever meet someone who wears gray and doesn't talk much, say thank you. Doesn't matter where we are." Max nodded and went back to drawing ladders. Elsa Rivera created a digital sketch and uploaded it anonymously to a small online forum for urban myths. Title: just enough to make Elsa's hands tremble. She printed the sketch, folded it, placed it between the pages of her travel journal. That night, she told Javier, "We weren't the only ones." And somewhere on the 14th floor of Helix 88, Ravi Patel kept a private file hidden behind 10 encrypted layers, not on the building's servers, but his own laptop. Inside, footage fragments. The blurred frame of a shoulder near the shaft wall. Audio waveforms from sub-level microphones, distorted but rhythmic, 3 knocks. And a list titled, "Anomalies Nobody Logged." At the top, March 4th, 8:18 a.m., arrestor triggered without signal. At the bottom, unknown female. Status, unverified. Sometimes, Ravi stared at that entry for hours. She wasn't on the payroll. She wasn't on camera. But she'd been there. And he owed her everything. Somewhere across the river, in a rented room that didn't ask questions and had no working smoke detector, Nyasha sat on the floor, wiping blood from her wrist where rusted steel had bitten deep. The news played on mute. Her eyes were closed. No medals. No interviews. No one knocking at her door. She hadn't stayed to be thanked. She never did. But she remembered their faces. Especially the boys. And the woman holding her stomach like something holy. You can't repay someone like her. Without recognition. Without certainty she'd survive. Without even being asked. And what's maybe hardest to accept is that the world won't remember her. There won't be a plaque in the Helix 88 lobby. There won't be a podcast tribute. Her name won't trend. But the people she saved? They remember. They remember the silence. The sudden stop. The knocks on the ceiling that said, "You're not alone." Because sometimes, the most powerful rescue isn't about explosions or cameras. It's about one person, choosing to step in, when everyone else is frozen. And that kind of person, they rarely announce themselves. They just appear, do what has to be done, then vanish. So maybe the next time someone walks past you, quiet, invisible, written off by their uniform, their silence, their age, or the color of their skin, you'll look twice. Not with pity, but with respect. Because you never really know who's walking among you, and what they've already saved you from. Headphone: this story was based on real principles, real instincts, real silence. If it moved you, don't just scroll. Share it. Remember it. Respect the invisible ones. They're out there, still listening, still watching, still ready.